All right, so this is the examples video for percent page 1. So this is the second pack of math that I've sent home. It's all about percent, and we're going to start with page 1. I've already uploaded all of the lessons, so the notes that you should have, especially those 100 math facts. Those are really going to come in handy. So let's talk about page 1. So page 1 is all about percentages. Working with them, figuring out what they are, how to create them, especially out of fractions. So if you take a look at number 1 on page 1, it says, in questions 1 to 4, express the shaded part of each figure as a percent. So we've done this before for fractions, where you look at the colored in bits and you write the fraction for that. This time you're going to write the percent. Now remember, percent means out of 100. And if you look on questions 1 to 4, those figures, those squares, are split into 100. So you already know that if it's out of 100, all you have to do is figure out how much is colored in. So if you take a look at number 1, you can see that there are 2 rows and a half that are all colored in. And since we know that the whole square is 100 little squares together, then we also know that each line of squares is 10, right? And then there's 10 all together, so 10 times 10 is 100. And so if I've got 2 of those colored in, that means I have 20. And then half of another one would be 5. So of the 100 squares that make up the big square, there are 25 of them that are colored in. So that means, how much percent do I have? I have 25%. So for number 1, you write 25%. So that's all you have to do for numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Figure out how many of the tiny little squares are colored in. However many are colored in, that's your percentage. Let's move on to number 5. For number 5, it's working the same way. So you've got a figure. What percent of each figure in questions 5 to 8 is shaded? So what part is colored in? And if you notice, for question number 5, there's a square, but this square is not split into 100. It's only split into 4. So this is going to be where you want to remember those math facts that we wrote down during the lessons, because if I write the fraction for how much is colored in, I have 1 over 4. So in that figure, there's 4 squares, 1 of them is colored in. So we've done this a billion times, fractions. Now what I need to do is change it so that the denominator is 100, and that will get me my percent. So on these questions, from 5 all the way to 8, you have to figure out, first of all, what's the fraction that's colored in, and then change it into a fraction with 100 on the bottom, the denominator. So think about those math facts that you know. How do you turn 4 into 100? What could you times with the 4 to make 100? And we know that 4 times 25 is 100. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 1 times 25 is 25, which means this one is 25%. So number 6, 7, and 8, you're going to need to work this way. Figure out what the fraction is first, what's colored in from the picture, and then change it into a fraction with 100 on the bottom, because of course that's what a percentage is. It's out of 100. Once you've got that, you take your numerator, and that's your percentage. If you take a look at number 9 and number 10, it says what percent of each figure in questions 9 to 10 is not shaded. So this is just you figuring out the fraction of what is not colored in. So if you take a look at number 9, that is split into 2. And the part that's not colored in is 1. And you again need to figure out what is that going to be with a denominator of 100 so that I can figure out what my percent is? So go back to those math facts, those 100 math facts that we were talking about during the lesson. Those are super important because it tells you in those math facts that 2 times 50 is 100. And whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 2 times 50 is 100. 1 times 50 is 50. So the part that is not shaded, part that's not colored in, is 50%. All right, let's talk about number 11. Now for number 11, they didn't give you any figures that are colored in or not colored in. They just give you a fraction and they want you to turn it into an equivalent fraction with 100 on the bottom so that you can find the percent. So for number 11, I have 1 over 10, which equals something over 100, which of course then equals something percent. So for number 11, 12, 13, and 14, this is how you're going to do that. First of all, use your 100 math facts. You're going to be using them for every single page. So I want you to memorize them. So 10 times something is 100, and we know that 10 times 10 is 100, which means 1 times 10 is 10, and that's my percentage. So if you're not sure, how do I get my percentage? Where does that number come from? It's the number that's on top of your fraction when the denominator is 100. That's how you know. Okay, that's your percent. All right, if you take a look at number 15, number 15 gives you fractions, and they've already got 100 on the bottom. So number 15 has 21 over 100. 21 is my percent because 100's on the bottom. That's how you know. If you have a fraction and 100 is on the bottom, 21 is your percentage, whatever's on the top. But then if you take a look at number 18, number 18 does not have 100 on the bottom, so you're going to have to find an equivalent fraction with 100 on the bottom. So I've got 7 over 50, so you're going to rewrite it as an equivalent fraction with 100 on the bottom, and then you'll be able to find out what your percentage is. So using your 100 math facts, you know that 50 times 2 is 100. So that means 7 times 2 is going to get you your new numerator, which is going to be your percent. 7 times 2 is 14. So 7 over 50 is 14%. All right. If you have any questions, of course, just get in touch and I will, of course, help you. So that's page 1. Please continue working on the math. It is important.